Hello and welcome to the history of Babylon 5. Today's episode, the history of the Shadow. The Shadow is a name given to the ancient race who were among the oldest of the first ones. The name Shadows were given to them by the younger races as their actual name is unknown, though it is said to be over 10,000 letters long and unpronounceable by any of the younger races. The Shadows resemble a cross between an earth spider and praying mantis, with a small rectangular head and 7 pairs of pinpoint eyes in 2 socketed rows. Externally, they're colored in shades of dark purple and black, and possess the ability to cloak themselves from the most visible wavelengths. They can, however, sometimes be seen as figures of static in the upper end of the infrared spectrum. When they were a young race, they were found by Lorien and the Firstborn, who taught and guided them until they were ready to stand on their own. Like the Vorlons, the Shadows opted to stay in the galaxy to guide the younger races when most of the first ones went out beyond the rim, into the void between galaxies. The Shadows believed that the races could only grow stronger through chaos and conflict, and that driving the younger races to war with one another. A dramatically opposite view to the Vorlon ideology of order and obedience. Initially, the 2 guardian races agreed to honor each other's positions, respected their boundaries, and agreed to the rules of engagement. However, as time went on, one or both of them decided that their way was the only correct way to help the younger races. A series of wars fought against Shadows, with the Vorlons recruiting several younger races, and even some of the last remaining first ones. The Shadows were repeatedly defeated and driven back to their home world of Zahadum, where Lorien was known to have been dwelling. The Shadows believed that they were showing him respect by returning every time. After a defeat, they would go into hibernation, waiting for the right time to move again. Around the Earth year 1259 AD, the Shadows were again awake and on the move, setting up bases on remote worlds, forging alliances, and seeding conflict among the younger races. One planet resisted their attempts to establish a base, and so the Shadows decided to make an example of them by releasing a biogenetic plague into their atmosphere, then leaving them to die. One of the younger races, the Minbari, were then new to space travel and were driven back by the Shadow forces almost to defeat. When they lost their greatest star base, the center of their war effort, it appeared as though they were on the verge of collapse, both from without and from within. To their surprise, as if in answer to their prayers, a replacement station arrived along with the Vorlons, who had until that point been unknown to them, and a Minbari not born of Minbari, named Valen. Around this time, one shadow base of operations was located on one of the southern continents of the Narn homeworld, and were ignored mostly by the Shadows. After Narn pilots in their small explorer vessel discovered the Shadows were engaged in war that threatened to overwhelm the very stars themselves and the location of their homeworld in a system at the edge of known space, Jukan leads acts of sabotage to disrupt the Shadows' war efforts, bringing themselves to the attention of the Shadows. The presence of telepaths in the local population prompts the Shadows to send their dark servants to kill them. Eventually, Jukan, with the support of Jalan and a number of other such beings, lead the last remaining telepaths to drive the Shadows from Narn, never to return. On Mimbar, Valen eventually manages to unite the Minbari alongside the Vorlons and some of the remaining first ones, and organize the other races to drive back the Shadows. The Shadows retreated into hibernation once more, though not before burying many of their ships and supplies on hundreds of barren, unpopulated worlds, including Mars and Ganymede, where they would be safe and easy to quietly retrieve when the time was right again for another war. The return of the Shadows was prophesied by many races, including the Minbari, the Narn, and the Pakmara. In 2253, one of the Shadows' hidden ships was discovered 300 feet beneath Sinira Platum by an IPX-sponsored dig. However, the war did not end till a Shadow was met its vessel on field. As soon as the ship was exposed to sunlight, it let off a homing signal, and before long, another vessel arrived to retrieve it, though not before the humans managed to install a homing beacon of their own, allowing them to track the location of Zahadum. In 2254, while the Shadows slept, their allies recognized the newly completed Earth Alliance station Babylon 4 as the same station that disappeared with Valen to turn the tide against them, sending a group of fighters to attach a fusion bomb they hoped to destroy it and change the course of history in their favor. The attempt failed when an unknown vessel intercepted and destroyed them shortly before B4 disappeared into a temporal rift. In December 2256, the IPX ship Icarus arrived in the Alpha Omega system. Their long-range probe landed on Zahadum, causing the premature awakening of the Shadows. The Icarus crew was captured by the Shadows on January 3, 2257, shortly after landing and given the opportunity to serve them, all but one, a Dr. Morden, who refused and were converted into fresh CPUs for the warships. In 2258, Morden acted as their emissary to Babylon 5, eventually striking up an alliance with the Centauri ambassador Londo Malari. The Shadows assisted the Centauri in combat against the Narn, apparently without reward. The chaos caused an excellent smokescreen for the Shadows to begin moving openly in 2259. In 2260, the Shadow War continued in earnest. John Sheridan used a thermonuclear device in a White Star ship in order to destroy the Shadow capital on Zahadum. Thank you for watching the History of the Shadows. Special thanks to the Babylon Project for all information you heard today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. If you have, thank you. And have a nice day. Bye-bye.